Okay. Well, welcome to season 4 of Changing the Game. And this season, we're talking about hot lead generation strategies and referrals. Oh, and I just see another person. So I'm actually going to let them get in here too. So we know referrals are the lifeblood of your business, but are there other ways that you can supplement that? And how attractive would it be if you could get 20 to 30% of your leads coming from other avenues and the ability to have more control in your business? So I'm your host, Jennifer Hensley with Playmaker Coaching and Consulting. And after working with advisors for more than 20 years, I knew there were some ways that we could help make things more manageable, more digestible, and help you get more wins in your business. So today we're going to be talking with Lauren Peter out of the Holter office in Milwaukee, and she's going to be talking about the hot lead generation strategy, hot lead generation strategy of client engagement plans and creating more raving fans for your business and what that can do for you. So we're going to kick things off in just a minute. As we get into today's conversation, we're going to have about a 10-minute conversation with Lauren. Then we'll open it up for questions. You can either put your questions in the chat. We'll be sure to answer those, or you can unmute yourself and ask your questions live. We'd love to have that as well. So we'll get into things. So Lauren, why don't you start us off with telling us a little bit more about, who your clients look like, how you particularly help them, and then we'll get into our conversation about your client engagement plan.
For sure. So I have been with Northwestern. I'll celebrate 4 years in May. The size of my practice. So I've got myself, and then I just hired a new AFR. So she is just getting onboarded. She's awesome and super focused on helping me continue the client engagement plan that Jennifer and I put in place. What was that? About a year ago, we started doing this. So my practice is heavily focused on female professionals, and I would say that happened probably over the last 18 months. And Jennifer was huge in helping me do that and really honing in on like who I actually enjoy working with.
I'm glad that you mentioned that about who you actually enjoy working with, because as we've been having all these conversations the last few weeks around speaking engagements and direct messaging, online prospecting, and now client engagement plan, I think the thing that is common is how clear you each are about who your client is and how you can help them. That makes all of these strategies so much easier and more effective for you as you go forward. So tell us a little bit more about why you felt like having a client engagement plan was really a critical part of your lead generation strategy.
Yeah, I think so if you look at my culture index, because I align with that a lot of like who I am as a person, I fall actually pretty high on the creative scale and like ingenuity. So I have a lot of ideas, but like finding the time to actually execute on it and having a process to execute, I just like didn't have it. So I would haphazardly like send a thank you note that was handwritten to somebody I did a fact finder with, but there was really like no consistent process behind me actually doing those things. Same thing, I wanted to provide my clients value in terms of like if they got married, obviously I want to send them a gift. If they had a baby, I want to make sure that they know like we're going to do planning for your kid too, not just you guys. So I wanted to put in place a process behind that. And for a long time, it was like, okay, we're occasionally doing it, but there really was no like consistency around it.
I know we talked about like, how do you even know that those events, happen? So we'll probably get into that a little bit more as we go with this. What are you ultimately hoping then by showing this appreciation, engaging the clients in these ways that it does for your practice? What's your goals from your client engagement?
Well, obviously more referrals. We're all out there for that. But I think the big thing is like, when I joined Northwestern and started this career, like I really wanted clients to come to me with every financial question, even if it wasn't something that I do from a professional standpoint or something that I can help them with. I wanted them to feel like super confident in our relationship, that they could ask any question, even if it may be a dumb question. I put that in quotations because I don't think any question is dumb, but I really wanted to be at the center of their financial strategy and build a relationship with them that, I hope that these people become friends of mine over the next 30 years of working with them.
So it's definitely, I heard an advisor actually just recently talking about, if you're taking that hunting approach versus the farming, the harvesting approach. And I would think that this is probably more of that harvesting approach, that you're not necessarily going to see sometimes that result immediately, especially from gifts. Now, in terms of events, you might get that a little bit quicker, but it's really about, that's that experience and that reputation that you're trying to provide, that people are like, you got to meet this person, right?
Yep.
So tell us a little
Exactly.
bit more specifically about how you approached it. I know we've worked through it and everything, but for everybody else, what are maybe those 3 to 5 steps that you use to go from, hey, I want to do something, or I have all these ideas, into something that you can actually replicate and do consistently to drive results?
Yeah. So I think the first thing that was really important was like determining who that target market was. Because I think when we come into this business, especially when we're super early on, we're taught like anything with a pulse you should be meeting with, like anybody with a pulse, right? And for me, it was like getting out of that mindset of like, I have to meet with anybody and everybody that's willing to meet with me. Because in reality, I wasn't getting energy from a lot of the people that I was meeting with. And I wanted to really figure out like who in my existing client book did I find and get a lot of energy from. So what we did together was so cool in terms of like you being able to do interviews with those top clients that I really felt like appreciated the most about me, or most of our conversations, but like, what did they enjoy working with me for, right? Like, why do they work with me? And then really drilling into like, okay, if they're an A+ client or an A client that I've segmented, why are they that, right? Like, why do I feel that way about them? What about them? What characteristics? It may not necessarily be like how much business they do with me, but in terms of like, do I align with who they are as a person, right? Like, I think that's so important. So what ended up happening is I realized that the underlying characteristic of all those people that like I got energy from were financially independent women. So then I was like, okay, cool. We get to target that market. So that was the first thing that we had to do. Second thing was really pivoting the existing prospecting process that I had. So like I was doing a lot of feed lists. I still do a lot of feed lists. And I had people on those lists that I thought I needed to meet because they were like, ooh, that would be a great prospect. But in reality, that prospect didn't fit who I really wanted to meet. So pivoting and making sure that I was prospecting to women because that's who I wanted to meet, right? And then really sharing with everyone that I'm connected to in my annual reviews and any new client meetings, like I work with financially independent women and here's how I define them. So if you run into a friend or a family member that fits that bill, I would love to meet them, right? So just making sure that everyone I worked with knew who I wanted to meet. And then especially when people refer me, I'm now thanking them with a handwritten note or a gift. So making sure that they understand like them giving me a referral is the most important compliment I could ever get from them. And that I think we miss out on oftentimes, especially in marketing strategy. It's like we don't thank the people that really support us in the most meaningful ways.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times, I mean, it has good intentions, but sometimes it's do we set ourselves up to be able to follow through on those, right? So I know one of the things, as I heard you talk, some of what we talked about came through was you started with a strategy of getting really clear of what are we trying to accomplish. And then it's like, well, what does success look like? What are we trying to drive out of this? And what do we need to know to be able to drive that kind of experience with our clients? Is there any budget that's going to go into it? And you'll probably talk a little bit about that. I'm sure people are always interested in like, how much are you spending on it and what you're doing in terms of like gifts or events and everything to stay connected with your clients. But certainly, like you talked about, there's some things you can do that are very low dollar, if any, like even just showing appreciation, thanking people in a personal way. How do you set up your process? And then, do you get it on the calendar so that it actually gets done, and working with your team if you have that, or your CRM system and everything to make sure that you can try to streamline some things and keep it easy and effective for you. So let's talk a little bit more about what has worked best for you when it comes to delivering that experience, especially your client engagement plan, those touches. Obviously, you had to, like you say, get crystal clear on who your A+ were and what you were going to do for who, because you probably couldn't do everything for everyone. What has worked best for you? What are some of the biggest wins so far?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So process, making sure that you're using some sort of tracking tool. So for us, we do a lot of tasks in CRM. So like if I know I've met with a client, I know the due date of their child, I'm going to put that as a task for the month that child's due to make sure that we're getting that gift ready for them, for that, obviously the birth of their child. Same thing for weddings, right? They're going to tell you their wedding date. We can just plug that into CRM and make sure that we have that as a task to remind us, hey, we got to send out that cutting board gift that we give our married clients. So that's a big piece. 2, making sure that my team's on board with it and knows their responsibility. So there's a lot of ways that we can use CRM to really help with workflows, especially when it comes to marketing. But making sure that the data is in CRM is probably the most important piece.
Yeah. And I know we talked about CRM quite a bit of sometimes what can feel like challenges, or just what's the capabilities, and understanding that and trying to figure out, is this the best place to do it, or what works the best? So I know you explored a few different opportunities before you figured out for your team. It sounded like using those tasks and putting the dates in there was probably the easiest way to manage those kind of life events that were going on. So on the other side, we know there often are challenges, and you've already hit a little bit on this and everything, of why you decided you want to focus on this more strategically anyway. Tell us a little bit about, at this point, what are some of the things that maybe you're still working on, still trying to figure out, how do we go to the next level with?
Yeah, I would say the hardest thing that I've had some staffing challenges this year. So I know that every advisor that's hiring people probably has the same ones, but I would say there is a disruption in the execution of the plan when we have new staff that join. So currently the new staff that I have, I'm excited for her. She's super excited about our marketing engagement plan. She can't wait to get started on it and really start to execute on it. So it's really, I think, where a challenge, not only in the execution portion, but making sure that I find time to do it. I think a lot of times we are like, oh, I'm so busy, I can't even commit like 20 or 30 minutes. But Jennifer challenged me. She was like, just put 30 minutes on your calendar every week and like use that time to make sure you send a thank you to a client that referred you 3 people that week, right? So making sure that you at least give yourself some time during the week to actually execute on one thing that you've been wanting to do from a marketing standpoint.
Yeah. And some people like to batch things. Some people like to keep it a little bit smaller. You can find out certainly, right, what works for you, the best way to do it. But the more you can probably make it part of your ongoing process, like it sounds like you've done, the little bit easier it is to start to just make it a habit, just like other things that you're doing with your business. So while you continue to navigate the staffing piece, I think the other piece that we've talked about that hopefully will make that easier, would make that easier for other advisors, is because we've documented the plan. So when they come in, they can jump into that a little bit quicker than trying to say, well, who's your client and what is our message and how are we trying to engage with them? They have something they can refer back to and get up to speed a little bit to be able to represent your brand, because right, everything's part of an extension of our brand. So you talk a little bit about challenges, successes, some of the things that are going well with it. What are some things maybe that you've learned that if somebody else was wanting to take the next step with their client engagement plan, what would you advise them to make sure that they're maybe keeping in mind?
Yeah, I would say, and I talked about it a little bit already, of like really drilling into like who you enjoy working with and who you get energy from. Like, what's the similar characteristic of the clients that you have within your book? There's probably something and you just don't know, because I think so often we're like, cool, we're just like tacking on the new clients, right? Like, this is awesome, this is why we do this business, but we don't necessarily take the time to reflect on what does our client base look like? Who are we serving with this? And can we have a larger impact on that network by really honing in on one portion of it or one characteristic of them? So I'd say taking time to reflect. This is a great time to do it when you do business planning. I would tell you we're coming up on a great opportunity because awards year is ending. To really have the time and take the time to kind of plan for that too. And then I would say too, stop making excuses around committing 30 minutes. Like, I can't even tell you how many times Jennifer would email me and be like, so did you do it this week? And I'm like, you're right. Like, I need to hold myself accountable to what I say I'm going to do. And 30 minutes of marketing time a week to drive my business forward is not that much.
I was just talking with another group the other day and we said, how many of us have guilty of, I've already probably scrolled on our phone for 30 minutes or something a day, and could we reuse that time to do something purposefully in that space of how can I comment intentionally on somebody's content and maybe show appreciation that way if you have a limited budget. So there's many different ways you can do it. And just we all have the same 24 hours in a day, right? How we make the most of that time. So I think you kind of hit at that, try it at work tip, because we always like to make sure that our participants and everything have something like, what's that bite-sized one thing maybe in the next 2 weeks? Do you just kind of hit on that again for them of what's one thing maybe you suggest that they do to get started?
Yeah. I would say pull your A clients, your list out of CRM, and find that common characteristic of them so that you have an idea of like, who am I serving?
Wonderful advice. We also are interested, as we continue to do this, who else you look to in the marketing space, who brings you inspiration, who you think this group should be keeping an eye on, that's doing new or interesting things, or things that they're consistent and they're always showing up. Who else do you look to that you think this group should be maybe hearing from or paying attention to?
Shameless plug for my coach, but Scotty Taylor Jr., he's out of the LA office. He does a ton on social media, and I love his content and just the person that he is. He's very unapologetically himself, which I think oftentimes on social media, you aren't always getting real people, right? And who they actually are. So love him.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that goes back to what you talked about of the, people, just like you want to know who your clients are, they want to know who you are, and being able to show up in an authentic way in terms of how you're engaging with your clients. And it sounds like you're doing a lot with that, both from just those individual interactions, as well as the gifting or other pieces that you put in place on how you want to connect with them. So we're going to open it up for some quick question and answer. So if you have some questions, you can unmute yourself if you'd like and ask them live, or drop it in the chat, and we'll be sure to take your question there. I know, one of the most frequently asked questions, Lauren, that I hear in this space is, well, what kind of gifts are you doing, and where do you get gifts from? Do you want to speak a little bit about how you've worked through that?
Yeah. So I've really drilled into like kind of 3 opportunities that we can gift to clients. So one, I talked about obviously weddings. So if they're getting married, we send them a custom cutting board that has their name and the date that they got married, or the year that they got married, if we don't know the specific date, because I think a lot of times we aren't necessarily sure sometimes on the specific date, especially with COVID weddings and people having to reschedule, that kind of stuff. So that's the first one. For childbirth, we do a ceramic or a porcelain pig, like piggy bank, that says the child's name, first savings account, so that they know, hey, we're trying to instill some good financial habits with your child. And then I'll do like one-off. So like we just put one together this week for a client that referred me to 2 really, really good prospects. So she loves champagne. So we got her a really nice bottle of champagne and some like cheese and crackers to go with it. And then in terms of like annual stuff, so stuff that we send to a larger audience rather than just one-off. So I do this every year. I send out a postcard. I do this for my family, so I just included it with my client base too. So I send out a postcard. They're pretty inexpensive. I think I spend, based on the last couple of years, about $200 with postage and printing these, and they're on really nice cardstock. I've got on the back basically just a recap of my year. I think it's important to give your clients a glimpse into like your life, right? I think, if I'm working with a professional, I want to know what makes them tick, what's important to them outside of the professional space. So I like to give that to my clients too, so that they feel like they're connected to me in some way. And then in terms of the kind of A+ clients, what I've done in the past, so last year we gave these to my A+ clients. It was these are just calendars. So I have a client that has a postage company or a stationery company. So they created these for us. And I gave those to, I think it was like 15, 20 of my top COIs and A+ clients as a thank you of thanks for being a client. Thanks for trusting me. Have a great year.
I love, there are two things that you shared in there too, that I think I want to draw particular attention to. One is you found a way to really leverage that gift for your A+ clients in a couple of ways. You both utilized, used a client to their business to create it. So not only were you recognizing your best clients, but you were also giving business back to a client of yours that was probably meaningful to them. And then the other piece was, and now I'm going to lose my train of thought. But I think, I know what it was. Came back to me. Is that you found some things too, where you could be off the major holiday, because, so many times, everybody does something at Christmas or leading up to Christmas, and people are getting inundated. So it's harder to set yourself apart, but you've started to look at, maybe I want to be in a little bit different time frame when they're not feeling maybe as much loved, or what might be more relevant to what's going on in their business or their lives and everything. And looking for other opportunities than just the kind of standard one that most of us think about. So I think those are things to think about. And then what I was sharing as you were talking a little bit too, is if any of you are interested, you need more ideas. You're looking at, well, what can I do? Do you have a gifts and events guide that gives you, based off of different types of occasions, what some ideas are, where to actually get those from, some of the different places that we've heard advisors have used most often. So it can be a really helpful resource. So if you're interested in that, just put your email in the chat or reach out to us, and we'll make sure that we send that to you following today's call as well. And just checking to see if we have any other questions on the line. One of the other questions, well, I don't see anything in the chat at the moment. You talked a little bit about kind of around the budget and everything. How much do you feel like you're, when you look at your marketing and your where you're spending dollars on in your business, how much are you setting aside for things like client appreciation or events with your clients?
Yeah, so that's interesting that you bring up client appreciation events. I'm actually planning one right now. So I would tell you my budget previously has probably been a couple of grand a year. I don't necessarily spend all that much. It really just depends on like how many clients are getting married, how many people have kids every year, right? But I will say, I try and look at it as an investment in my practice rather than like this is an expense. So I really would like to align around 5% every year. So I do think I'll probably align with that this year, just based on the fact that we're doing a client appreciation event.
Yeah, and I know some advisors, especially as they progress, they start to look at like how much revenue are those clients generating from you, and then a portion of that you want to put back towards them to provide that experience. So one of the things that Lauren mentioned too was, putting this all together and mapping it out and everything, and starting with getting clear on your message. So if you're in that situation where you're thinking, hey, I'd love to have a better insight on what my clients are saying about me, or how could I get more niche and clear on my market, you can reach out to me. And we do have a Champions Club kicking off on the beginning of June, where we're going to be working with advisors to help you do just that, and make sure then that it also gets updated all across your online presence, so that you have a consistent message out there that can speak to you and speak for you and speak to your audience with what you're doing. So Lauren, I appreciate your time so much. If anybody does have additional questions, feel free to reach out to Lauren, or you can email me at jennifer@playmakercoach.com, and we'll be sure to follow up with you. And once again, if you want that resource, the client gift ideas, make sure you put that in the chat, and we'll get that out to you with the recording in the next few days. So one of the things we always want to do for our presenters is to get back to an organization that you're passionate about. I know you've been heavily involved in philanthropic in the past and everything as well as part of your previous career. Tell us about an organization that we can help support today.
Life Navigators. They're local to Milwaukee. They support the disability community with guardianship programs, trust programs, and really giving back to that community, and making sure that if unfortunately a person with special needs does not have family to take care of them, that they are taken care of in a meaningful way.
Well, that sounds fantastic. I know we have I have a couple special needs nephews, so I'm glad to be able to help support that organization. It sounds like they're doing great work. This is our last episode of this spring season, so we will be back this fall, probably around the September timeframe. So if you have topics that you're interested, you want to hear more about, or you're interested in speaking or think somebody else should be speaking on this, please reach out to us or in the NM Facebook group. Let us know. We want to get your feedback as we get closer to that on how we can make sure that these are really valuable to you. So remember, Lauren's try it at work tip, of getting really specific and just looking at your A+ clients and what you really know about them, and then what you can start to put together to take those small steps forward in the next few weeks. We appreciate your time again today. And I just have one final thought for you as we wrap up this season. Picture a day when you no longer have to worry about where your next lead's coming from, because you have those raving fans that are talking about you on your behalf. Picture a day when your clients say, wow, you really go above and beyond. I just told Sue she's got to meet you. Picture a day when you have that steady stream of new ideal clients coming in, so you can spend time with the people that really energize you, just like Lauren said. You're going to have the business of your dreams, and you're going to feel so good. So thank you all for your time today. We'll make sure we get that recording out, and anybody who was interested in the client appreciation event, we'll get that out as well. And we have just a couple of people that have popped on the last minute. So maybe there was something with their calendars and everything, but we'll make sure to get all the information out. Appreciate it again. Have a great rest of your day.